Why is it so hard for some of us to ask for help? Even when we're overwhelmed, even when we're struggling, even when we're carrying so much more than we were ever meant to carry. You tell people you're fine. You keep things to yourself. You carry burdens no one else knows about. But have you ever stopped and asked yourself why? I think a lot of us know what this feels like. Because on the surface, it looks like independence. It looks like being strong. It looks like handling things yourself. But if you look a little deeper, it often looks like carrying burdens no one else knows about. Feeling unsupported but struggling to let people in. Telling people you're fine when you're not. Withdrawing when life gets difficult. And even finding it easier to help everyone else than to receive help yourself. And honestly, sometimes this even begins to affect how we approach God, because we slowly go from talking to Him freely to holding certain things close to our chest. And it's not because we don't love Him. It's not because we don't trust Him, but it's because our hearts have become so used to carrying things alone. So in prayer, we only bring up certain things, the things that feel manageable, the things that feel easy to explain, while the deeper places remain hidden. And maybe you've done this for so long that this just feels normal now. So if this is something that you've been walking through, this channel is all about uncovering the beliefs behind our struggles and bringing them to Jesus for healing. Because the problem isn't that we struggle to ask for help. It's that sometimes our hearts spend years operating from a belief that was never God's truth. A belief formed through disappointment, through being let down, through having needs ignored, through learning that asking for help didn't always mean that you'd get help. Maybe people weren't there when you needed them. Maybe vulnerability wasn't always met with care. And maybe you were forced to become strong long before you were supposed to. And somewhere along the way, your heart formed the belief, I can only depend on myself. So you carry things alone. You keep your struggles to yourself. You avoid relying on other people. You withdraw when things get difficult. And even when support is available, you still struggle to receive it. Not because you don't want to, not because you don't need help or support, but it's because your heart is trying to protect you from being disappointed again. But maybe this is the exact point where we need to slow down, where we identify the behaviors and expose this heart belief. Because once you see and expose this belief, you can bring it to God. Because you can't surrender a belief that you can't see. So let's look into the Bible for a moment, because this is where the story of the paralyzed man becomes so powerful. And what I love about this story is that we see how the man who was paralyzed was carried into the house, lowered through the roof. And when Jesus saw him, he healed him. He didn't once shame him. He didn't reject him because he needed help and support to be brought towards him. He didn't tell him that he should have found a way to get there by himself. In fact, the willingness of him being carried to Jesus was the exact way for him to receive his healing. And I think this just reveals something so beautiful about the heart of God, because God never designed his people to carry life alone. And we see this throughout scripture. In Galatians 6:2, it says to carry one another's burdens, not because God expects us to be weak, but because he designed us for relationship, for support, for community, for love. And the thing about God's kingdom is that it works so differently to the systems that we may be used to. His kingdom doesn't shame need, it meets it. It doesn't glorify self-sufficiency, it teaches dependence. And here's the truth, you were never meant to carry life by yourself. You are never meant to do life alone. Dependence isn't weakness. Receiving support isn't failure. Needing help doesn't make you a burden. And asking for help isn't something to be ashamed of. Because God never asked you to become self-sufficient. He never designed you to carry every burden alone. He never asked you to suppress your needs and to pretend that everything's okay when it's not. But instead, he invites you into relationship with him and with his people. So what do we do with this? How can we get healing from this? It would be so great if this week you could spend some time with the Lord. And if you could ask him these 3 questions. Where did I learn that I had to carry this alone? What experience taught me that I can only rely on myself? And Jesus, what do you want me to know instead? And whatever comes to mind, I want you to write this down. I want you to write this down and then bring this before the Lord. And once you've done that, find scripture that speaks directly against the belief that you've been living from. If you've believed that you can only depend on yourself, meditate on verses like Psalm 55:22. Cast your burdens on the Lord and he will sustain you. Galatians 6:2. Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the Lord of Christ. Isaiah 41:10. Fear not, for I am with you. I will strengthen you and help you. Write them down, pray through them, believe them, and then declare them over yourself. Because healing isn't just exposing the belief, it's allowing God's truth to replace it. And when that happens, we stop living from self-protection and we start living in trust. We stop carrying burdens that we were never meant to carry alone. And we begin experiencing the freedom that comes from being supported, being loved, and being cared for. So this is a truth that I want to leave you with today. You do not have to carry life alone. God never asked you to. And he also never intended for you to.